Welcome to Innovate Health, a space for open, thoughtful conversations about how technology and innovation are transforming the field of healthcare and opening new possibilities for better care for patients and everyone who works to keep them well. It's Thursday, July 9th, 2026. I'm Mika Kohlberg, and today, Dr. Ani Chintalapani and Dr. Tammy Wagner are joined by Dr. Aditi Martin, Senior Director for Collaborations and Entrepreneurship at OHSU, speaking about OHSU Innovates, the program helping researchers, clinicians, and students turn early-stage ideas into real partnerships, startups, and market-ready innovations.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Innovate Health. I am your host, Ani Chintalapani, and I'm joined by my co-host, Tammy Wagner. Tammy, how are you doing today?
Hey, Ani. I'm actually really excited to be here, really excited to talk about this new topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And what really gets me interested and excited about this one is, you and I, we sit so much on the operational side and we hear this term about innovation and advancing healthcare from the operational side so much. But I think one thing that really is going to be great about the conversation today is how we think about that term innovation and how we get to really see the idea of innovation being applied on the academic, but also just the research side, and really on the idea of taking research and what are we doing to really bring the people who are doing this hardworking research to the forefront and take their ideas to the next level. So I'm really excited to talk about that today. And to talk about it, we have a wonderful guest. Dr. Aditi Martin has been joining us today. Aditi, welcome to the show and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here and talk to you.
So Aditi, I guess kind of my first question is, for those who may not know you, can you just give us a little bit of your history into OHSU, how you came to this organization, and tell us a little bit about your program and about the program of OHSU Innovates?
Sounds great. So my name is Aditi Martin, and I am the Senior Director for Collaborations and Entrepreneurship here at OHSU. We were created in 2019. We are part of a broader group called OHSU Innovates that brings together a variety of different groups on campus, including my office, Collaborations and Entrepreneurship, and Technology Transfer. And I have a small role at Oak Tree, our clinical and translational research institute that also touches innovation, as well as the Knight Cancer Institute strategic partnerships team. So all of us create OHSU Innovates, and our goal is to really support our innovators at OHSU and also provide a variety of resources to support life science innovators across the region and the state of Oregon. I came to OHSU in 2015 from Johns Hopkins Tech Ventures. I was there for about 7 years in a variety of different roles, supporting innovation, doing business development, licensing, patent analysis, etc. And before that, I had a brief stint at a startup company that was a spin out from Johns Hopkins, developing a cancer diagnostic biomarker set. And before that, I was a grad student at VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University. So I'm a pharmacologist by training. My research at that time focused on cancer resistance development. And that was really my firsthand experience looking at how industry and academia can come together around innovation and discovery and really work together to get better treatments and diagnostics to our broader community.
I love that. And I think it's great that you're, really here and really part of it. I had done, when I was a clinical informatics fellow, I had kind of interfaced a little bit with Oak Tree when I was doing some research work. So that name was familiar to me, but kind of hearing how this has expanded beyond just clinical translation and really expanding to the idea of the entrepreneurship and really on this side of, for the people who are doing this research, being able to take their ideas into industry sounds really fascinating, that it's not just, they don't have to be stuck on their own. They don't have to do this all themselves or figure this out themselves. There is this program at OHSU that offers that. And I guess one thing I'm curious about is, how do you see this pathway, this kind of OHSU Innovates pathway, in harmony with or kind of supporting that academic research pathway? How do you see those two things working together?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of the reasons we launched OHSU Innovates is precisely to address what you brought up, Ani, which is entrepreneurship innovation can often be a lonely journey. And we have amazing colleagues here and a variety of other resources to help you along that journey. And so you don't have to navigate that alone. You know, a lot of our innovators are not trained in innovation. They're trained in something else. And when they discover something, we don't expect them to learn how to do the business of science and how are they going to do clinical trials or how are they going to work with patent law, et cetera. And so we have a variety of different groups on campus. I'll talk a little bit about my own group, Collaborations and Entrepreneurship. We support 3 broad activities here at OHSU, and one of them is partnership development. So if you have an idea or if there's an industry partner, say you went to a conference and there's an industry partner there very interested in your work, where do you go from there? So you can bring us in at that time, for example, and we can help cultivate that relationship with that industry partner. We're really agnostic to the type of partner that we can support. Industry is definitely our bread and butter, but we've seen a lot of younger startup companies wanting to work with OHSU. There are grant proposals that require a diversity of partners to come together, and we can help cultivate and manage that. So we help identify partners, create and build those partnerships, but then once that is executed upon, we can help with alliance management, post-partnership execution, so that we are delivering what OHSU said we would do as part of that partnership. So that's the first pillar. The second is around cultivating startups that are based on university intellectual property. So we don't do any of the compliance or contracting, but if we have an innovator and they come from all walks of life here at OHSU, they can be students, learners, trainees, researchers, clinicians, et cetera. And, you know, the idea they have, is it worth considering to create a startup around that? And if you've already initiated that path along with our colleagues at Tech Transfer, and you're wondering what it is like to talk to a VC about your idea and how do you cultivate that pitch. So we have those resources. We have some regional programs that we have co-founded with ecosystem partners to bring in some visibility to the innovation that's happening and the startups that are coming out in life sciences from OHSU and from the region. We have an amazing group of entrepreneurs and residents. These are individuals who have been there, done that when it comes to taking ideas forward in a variety of different sectors like drug discovery, medical device diagnostics. They know about the operations of running a startup. And so we can also connect you with our EIRs to think through and brainstorm these steps and, whether it makes sense to create a startup. And if you're already along that path, then they can help you think through sort of next steps, increase connectivity, customized mentoring, et cetera. And the last bucket in our group is the part that we're most closely connected with Oaktree on. We have a gap funding program called the Biomedical Innovation Program that's housed under that pillar. And it provides some funding to support innovative ideas that might address unmet needs for broader societal impact. And these are really innovative projects that are not your typical R01 or research grants, right? We attach that funding with tailored and dedicated project management so that, going back to your initial point, you're not alone in how do I use this money in the most impactful way. We will help brainstorm with you what the milestones should be in the first year that you get this funding so that you're moving your idea with those critical decision points on what's the next question I need to ask to move this idea forward towards commercialization. So that's very different from a research project. And along with that, when we launched that program in 2013, we realized that attaching that with what we call the Commercialization Readiness Program, which is based on, using some jargon here now, I-Core, which is an NSF initiated by NSF, a state-of-the-art sort of academic entrepreneurial education program. So we launched that in 2018 to go along with the funding program so that if folks have ideas that they're not quite ready to apply for funding, but they want to be part of a team that thinks about terms like value proposition. What is your idea bringing to the table? Who might your customer be? What is your competition? How do you actually talk to potential customers that might use your product or your idea? A lot of times we'll have people come to us and say, you know, my best friend from med school says this is a great idea. And I'm like, okay, is that truly an objective understanding? How about you talk to 10 potential customers? Here are the type of questions you should ask them. And then navigating regulatory paths, et cetera. So it is really a holistic way of looking at your idea early on, identifying different funding mechanisms to help you go through this journey of innovation.
I had a friend back in residency who once he found out I was doing informatics, that was the first thing was, I have this great idea. We can make $1 million off of it. And I just kept thinking of what you said, which is that very idea of people think they have a good idea, but how do you actually make it realized? I know Tammy has a lot of great questions she wants to ask. One last one I really wanted to get across, and this might lead into Tammy's questions, is with the way you've described this program, is this something that people come to you, or do you find yourself seeking people out for these ideas? How does this program work in the academic world and the research world? Is it a push system where you're going out there, or is it people coming to you, or is it a mix of both?
It is a mix of both. Some of our programs, most of our programs, we aim to have recurring, reliable dates, right? So people who are familiar with our programming know when to expect it. They know the cadence. So our funding program is offered twice a year, once in the fall, once in the spring. Our education program, the BIP Commercialization Readiness Program, is actually live right now. It's taking in potential teams and ideas and participants. It's offered every fall. So it's during the summer that the intake process happens, and it's live now. And that is a 6-week virtual program, mostly virtual, that launches usually in September of every year. So we do go out to departments and groups to present. We also have a newsletter that if you go to OHSU Innovates under the news and events section, you can sign up for our newsletter. That will also send this information your way. We work really closely with technology transfer, and that's the office that does intake of what's called invention disclosures. So every time you have a new idea, it's a great next step to connect with them and disclose your idea to them. So when our programs are live, we work so closely with them that they know when our program is coming live. And if they have new invention disclosures, they will also send them our way. So we try to do some outreach, and then we also really rely on our repeat customers sort of spreading the word and getting our future innovators that way.
Yeah, Aditi, I have some questions. Thanks, Ani. Could you give some examples of products, technologies, or therapeutics that your team has shepherded through the process that some of our listeners might recognize?
For sure. There are several amazing technologies, so it's hard to pick a few, but I will start with a technology that came out from Dr. Summer Gibbs's lab in biomedical engineering, and Dr. Gibbs and Dr. Connor Barth, who I think at that time was either her student or postdoc, I can't remember, but I believe they came to our Biomedical Innovation Program in 2013 with this idea of using fluorescent imaging agents to stain our nerves so that surgeons could actually see where they were cutting and try to avoid cutting nerves. So when I first heard about this, I was like, why is this not already a thing? Like, this should be a thing. And it was really an exciting project. And since that time, they have utilized a lot of our programming, including the funding program. They've worked with tech transfer. They have spun out a company called Trace Biosciences, and they have been really successful in raising what's called non-dilutive funding. So this is mostly through SBIR, SDTR grants that the federal government gives out through various agencies, NIH centers, and institutes. And it's a way to advance your research and discovery in your startup without diluting equity in your company. So that allows you to focus the funding on moving the idea forward. And they have been so successful in doing that. I believe they just started their clinical trial, and we've seen some of their images of how they are. You can think of multiple applications for this technology, right? And so that's an example. Another one is called NeuraMedica. And this was a technology that came to us at that time from Dr. Neil Roundy, who I think was a neurosurgery resident at that time, who partnered with a biomedical engineer, Rachel Dreilinger, who is their current CEO. And they disclosed the technology to us. It was a biodegradable clip that clipped the dura mater during surgery, and it saved OR time. It was bioabsorbable, and so less anesthesia, less time in the OR, and you just stitch up the patient and then you're done. And so even those small savings can translate to really high impact, and that product is now on the market. And so those are two examples of how our programming has supported the creation of inventions and startups that are really beneficial for society as a whole.
That's great. That's incredible. Can you give a little insight into you've described some of the types of people who have come forward. At what point do you want people to be connecting with the Innovate program? Like when they just start with a research project, when they're just starting their fellowship, or more mature? I'm thinking of the spectrum of people. Not many of my current fellows are associated with new businesses right now, but at what point could they come to your services and have a discussion?
I really would say the earlier the better, because a lot of times it takes that iteration with our team on you're in the clinic, you're doing research, and you're like, this is a gap, and I don't know how to address this gap, but I have this idea. It might be at the back of a paper napkin, it might be on your head or your lab notebook, and we have some amazing colleagues who can help you think through what that could be like. We have an innovation seminar series where you can listen to other examples that can maybe help you start thinking more along those lines of like, how should I navigate this next? A lot of times we have folks participating in our education programs where they don't really have a fully formed idea, but they're really interested in this journey of innovation, and they can come to our program manager and say, I'm really interested in participating in this education program to learn about innovation. Here are my skill sets. Can you match me to a team? And so
Nice.
a lot of times it's, hey, I have this background and skill set, and you get matched with a team that has a more crystallized idea. And so then, if it makes sense and it aligns with your interests and skill sets, maybe that's the team you work with going forward. So the earlier, the better. I would say I mentioned the seminar series. I think that's a good way to kind of get a sense of, how different ideas move forward. That hopefully also gets your brain juices going.
That's great.
Aditi, you brought up something that kind of stuck with me, and we had a conversation with Dr. Huang, who talked a lot about his work on OCT and how that transition from research to an idea that became a business, that became clinical practice. Maybe it's just because I'm of the space that I sit in, or the space that Tammy and I sit in. The operational side, I think, is so focused on the well-being of OHSU as an organization. We're looking at our hospital, our healthcare system, the care of our staff and of our patients. But you brought up something about helping people grow ideas into something that's going to benefit everybody. That's really not just like limited to OHSU. And it makes me wonder about the thought of success. how does your program define success when the goals and its mission is so much bigger and broader than just OHSU in general? Do you think about them in metrics? How does that term success for this program apply to you, and how do you view that?
That's a great question. And I have a short answer and a long answer.
I want both. I
All
would love
right.
both.
You mentioned Dr. Wong. So, a wonderful innovator, repeat innovator. His technology has been applied in numerous areas, including dentistry, believe it or not, And so from our lens, what we've seen is, yes, we work with Dr. Wong and his lab and his mentees. And now we are seeing other innovators using OCT and coming to us with new applications and new ideas. So, in one sense, one of our metrics is how many people are we touching and how many people are coming to us. And especially when we see either repeat customers or ideas that we have previously funded, but now they're coming back with a different application, that's certainly a metric, right? I think when it comes to some of our innovation programs, we are certainly interested in ROI in the sense of, is this going to get to market? And then do we get anything back financially? As an institution, as an inventor, our technology transfer office, for example, they would be great to talk to in terms of how that distribution occurs. They are the group that manages that. Generally speaking, if an idea makes it to the market in the sense it's licensed to either a startup company or an existing company, the distribution, any revenue coming back is a third with the school, the department unit, and then the inventors, right? So there is some financial incentive if your idea makes it big. And we have examples like that. From our partnership standpoint, we're really looking at what can we do that we wouldn't be able to do on our own. So an example of that, as an academic medical institution, we're definitely counting publications. So with our partners and collaborators, are we publishing with them? So we keep track of that. Are we receiving funding through mechanisms that we wouldn't be eligible on our own, or we wouldn't even have access to on our own? So that is also something that we're keeping track of, is like, what type of funding are we getting back into our institution? Through our partnerships, we also get access to opportunities like state-of-the-art equipment that we wouldn't have access to unless we were working with that partner. Educational opportunities for our staff, our students, our learners, and our faculty that we wouldn't have access to without that partnership. So there are some of those softer metrics, and then there are harder metrics in the sense of, did this partnership or innovation lead to a financial ROI? A lot of really successful universities that have heavily invested in innovation have also received larger ROI when it comes to both softer and harder metrics. And that kind of goes into our strategic planning work that's happening right now. We're really excited about that. Innovation is a big part of our strategic planning activities, and we're excited to see where that goes.
I appreciate that answer. And it's definitely a great one to think about in terms of the downstream effects. The thing you brought up about ideas which spawn more ideas, and seeing that as a measure of success is really great to me.
Hey, Aditi, I have a question. As somebody who does not live in this world of ROI or figuring out which startup is the next to bet on, but a lot of these decisions require quite a bit of risk tolerance. How does Innovate at OHSU navigate the risk that is necessary with some of these endeavors? And how have you seen our thought process or our culture around that change over time?
Yeah, I think I definitely feel like it has changed in the 10 years that I've been here. And I also feel like with our newer president, Dr. El Nahal, who is very ambitious and driven especially when it comes to innovation and the role that OHSU can play as an anchor institution for innovation and economic development for the region and state as a whole. I feel like it is further changing, where people will have more of an appetite for innovation And as an institution, hopefully we will have more of an appetite for innovation and, the risk that comes with it. I sometimes I'll go back to the numbers with grant writing. You put in so many grants, it's so much hard work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, what is it, like a 25% chance that you'll get funded?
Yep.
So that's fairly risky too. It's just that a lot of times our brains are used to that number and that, chance of success, right? But I think that when you look at your idea and the direct impact that it can have on our population, and OHSU being an academic medical health center, so we have the research expertise, we have the learners, and we have the patient population through our healthcare. So all of these expertise coming together really makes us an ideal institution to prioritize innovation. And we definitely have the talent here. We've also heard sometimes this resistance with the word commercialization, like it's a dirty word, like, well, I don't want to make money. I'm in this for academic pursuits. And, a lot of amazing innovations have come about because of this intersection of academic research and discovery and industry expertise. And so I'm hoping that there's more of a culture change that will increase our appetite for innovation. I think things like Gatorade, I think even Lipitor came about because of this, intersection of like academic expertise and industry expertise. So
what do you tell someone if they're having to meet with somebody who's going to talk more about commercialization or potential ROI and they're nervous about that? Like, how do you coach people with ideas through that experience of having to think about what would this look like as a marketable product?
I think, the first thing that comes to my mind is it's a fairly long journey. And so while we want to keep the end goal in mind, baby steps, right? I think with anything in life, if you're fixated on the end goal, I mean, we have a med school, right? And if you are starting out as a high school student and you feel so inundated and overwhelmed by like, oh, I have all these years and I have so much, schooling, yeah, that feels overwhelming. But you take it a step at a time and you have the right crew with you, which we have here, and then focus on your next step and build out a plan in that way. And if folks take the same perspective in their innovation journey, then maybe it will feel less overwhelming. And as they see the successes and their own ability to pivot as like, oh, we thought we were going to work with this company. Turns out that's not going to happen. But through that interaction and our preparation and like making this pitch to another VC, now we have this other opportunity. And so we're going to pivot. So it's sort of like almost, like a lot of life journeys, right? Like you think you have this plan and you have this vision, you get the right team with you to do that, and you just take your next step and then reevaluate and reassess at that point, and then you make your next best informed and educated step. And so I think if they thought about it that way, maybe it wouldn't feel as overwhelming.
Yeah. Have you ever been partnering with a potential investor or business platform and then decided not to continue that partnership based on maybe anxiety or nervousness about the person developing the idea?
I think we have had, let me see, we've definitely funded projects where there were certain milestones to investigate whether this idea had legs, and then turned out it was a dud for whatever reason. That does happen, and that's part of the risk. We have also worked on projects with industry partners where we worked with them and the science looks great, but the company decided that this was not the area they were going to pursue for whatever reason. They had a CEO change or they were going to pivot to a different disease area. And in some of those instances, we've brought the technology back to OHSU and our PIs decided they wanted to pursue it as a startup. So, but would they have gotten there if they hadn't worked with the company, from initially? So it's all about pivoting, and sometimes you your pivot is that this is a no-go, like this was a bad idea. But now you know that and you learned something through that experience so that next time you have an idea, and we work with such amazing and smart people, and very few of them and very few of us have this one idea and that's it, right? Like I think we're all trained to think innovatively. And so maybe your first experience didn't go about and, span out as you had expected, but you learned something about the process that you can then apply to your next idea.
That's great framing.
I have one follow-up question, Aditi, and then I kind of want to close out on maybe the future vision. You brought up this idea of the hesitancy or this kind of nervousness and angst about, why do I have to, push it through innovation or industry? I just want to, do the research. Do you have an example of somebody you worked with that was really resistant, but then kind of as working with your office, and working with your department, they were able to be swayed and kind of shift into that mindset, into being able to think about industry as a potential partner and not having to have those, kind of conflicting opinions or conflicting views?
Yeah, I can think of a couple of examples. So I think initially I was saying that our group was created in 2019, and some of our predecessors did some of this work, but it was on a smaller scale. And then when our team was created, I think there was 2 of us, and now I have 3 team members that support partnerships. And so part of the balance of bringing on new team members is to show that there's a need and that there's an appetite for working with industry, right? So we knew that there were groups on campus that were working with industry partners for years, but had not been exposed to this concept of alliance management, where there's this office that's supporting that partnership and this dedicated project management support around that partnership. So initially there was a lot of resistance from some of these groups on like, who are you? Why are you coming in? And what are you going to bring to the table when it comes to supporting this relationship we've had with this industry partner for years? And I will say that I tell my team this all the time, that our work is all about relationship building, cultivation, management, internally and externally. So with our innovators, with other offices that support our innovators, and then also external entities that want to work with our innovators. And so over time, what has happened is, as if we see groups like that we don't take offense to that, because we understand that we're trying to help them see that we can take things off their plate so they can continue working on their research and innovation on that partnership, and try and take some of this connecting with the contracting team, connecting with our cores if they're part of that agreement and working with the company, to just make sure that the partnership is moving forward smoothly and they can focus on what's next and how do we grow this partnership. And I'm really glad to say that we have been able to show that value, and teams have opened up. It takes time, but teams have opened up to us, and now they come to us, in the early stages of like, hey, I had this conversation with our partner at the company, and, this would be really good for our team here, but then also maybe this other team in cardiology. And so that's our goal. That our goal is to, how do we can certainly support these one-off partnerships, but like, how can we engage in partnerships that are broad? We also work really closely with the foundation. They just onboarded a new team member whom we work really closely with around corporate engagement. So a lot of our industry partners have philanthropy aspects to them. And our goal is, how do we understand the relationship with all of OHSU and the value that a partner can bring to all of OHSU and vice versa?
I love that story. And I think the fact that you've been able to grow as a team, the fact that you're able to get people to shift their mindset and start approaching you sooner, really to me just is reflective of the work that you've done and what your team has done. So kudos to you and your team and everything that you all have put together. As we approach the end, my last question before I give it to Tammy to ask hers, What do you see as the future? What does the future hold for you for the Innovates program? What is something you're really excited about? And just kind of in general, I know you mentioned Dr. Elnahal and his vision for OHSU, but what do you see as the future for your program?
Well, I think this is a really exciting time for our team and for OHSU. We are actively engaged, like I was saying, in the strategic planning work to come up with an aligned way of how can we support our innovators moving forward. One of the things we're working on right now is looking at startup space, so that, for example, if our innovators want to launch a company, can we help them do that on site? There are a lot of advantages to that, right? Co-locating with your peers who are thinking along those lines helps cultivate more of that, and connectivity with various resources like our core facilities that are on campus. Can there be connectivity between our startups and facilities and expertise that's here already? Could that also then stimulate more of our learners to engage with these startups? And so I think those are some of the areas that I'm really excited about moving forward. We are also working with the foundation more actively on, how do we support innovation more broadly? And Dr. Elnahal is also very engaged with our ecosystem partners. And so I don't have any details to share just yet, but I have not seen this level of energy when it comes to innovation in the 10 years I've been here. So I know I'm biased, but I'm very excited and feel very optimistic about OHSU and our role when it comes to innovation and entrepreneurship.
All right, I have a question. Aditi, there may be listeners out there who are hearing you talk thinking, I have ideas. My ideas can change the world. How do they engage with your team if they've never even participated or taken any courses or even understand anything? What would you recommend?
Yeah, great question. Please, if you just look up OHSU Innovates, you will see there's several ways to reach us. We have an email you can reach us on, oce@ohsu.edu is the inbox for my team. We also have a newsletter that you can sign up for on our website. We have an annual impact report that, Ani, you were talking about metrics and ROI.
Mm-hmm.
We have an annual impact report that's on our website, and it covers a lot of our highlights as well as numbers every year.
I saw that.
Yeah, and so those would be some of the ways you can reach out to us, and definitely sign up for our newsletter.
I will absolutely do that. Tammy, anything else?
No, I really appreciate getting to spend some time with you today. I had very little knowledge about this program at OHSU. I did stumble upon your impact report this morning, and it was really exciting to read about. So I hope people are listening, realizes how much energy and collaboration and more building of future states is happening at OHSU and takes advantages of your services.
Yeah, it really is. And I will say that we are a group of offices working together. And so if you have any question that has anything to do with OHSU or with innovation, please, you can email me. My name is Aditi Martin. My email is martiad@ohsu.edu. And if my team's not the right office to support you, we will connect you with the right office that can support you with your query.
Well, I'll be sure to tell all of my friends who have their, $1 million, $1 billion, nowadays $1 trillion ideas to send them on your way. So I will say this has been a wonderful conversation. I always find it refreshing when I get to see a part of OHSU that I don't often get to see, and seeing this side of OHSU that is really pushing research and highlighting it as important and something that can grow beyond just the research itself and can help people really achieve their potential out in the world and help as many people while and connect them with partners and industry. And the fact that it's not done, slyly was saying, you kind of mentioned the idea that this is a journey and it's a process and there's going to be bumps along the road. In my head, I said, oh, so this, ChatGPT can't just generate the right pathway for you. This is a good thing to know that this is a hard process, and it's hard enough on its own, but I think having a team at OHSU that can help guide people through that journey is really wonderful to me to see. Thank you so much, Aditi, for being here. We really appreciate that. And we really hope to connect with you soon and get to continue to have you back on our show to talk about more success stories. We would love to have, people share their success stories and be able to share it with the world. So absolutely wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for your time. Tammy, as always, thank you again for being here. And I want to thank everyone for listening. And we hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.
Innovate Health is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcasts. Innovate Health is a production of ITG Clinical Informatics and Strategic Communications. This episode was produced by Mika Kohlberg. Thank you for listening.